And now it's Boomer Life. Lifestyle ideas designed to make your life more engaging, meaningful, and complete. Celebrating the baby boomer generation. This is Boomer Life with Sterling Fox.
Well, good evening. Welcome to Boomer Life this Monday evening in Vancouver. It's great to have you with us. And for the first time on this program since Boomer Life began here on AM 650 many months ago, we're finally going to take an hour and talk about hearing. This is an incredibly important topic, especially for boomers, and it's a real pleasure to finally be able to get around to it and to have two incredible guests in studio to get through the conversation with. Our guests are Mark Hambley and Dr. Ted Venema. They are with Next Gen and Mainland Hearing Group on Vancouver Island, here in the Lower Mainland, up in the interior. Mark and Ted, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here, Sterling.
Mark, you've been in the business, the hearing business, for a very, very long time. You're the founder of a few companies, including Next Gen.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about yourself, and because you were an optician, you were an eyeglasses guy.
I was.
And then you got into the hearing business, and this all happened up in Terrace and Kitimat years ago.
It did, and I got interested primarily through an otologist, that's an ear surgeon, who visited the Prince Rupert area. I was an optician at that time, and he knew a mutual friend. He would see patients up there, and he had nobody to refer them to. So people who had acquired hearing loss couldn't be treated. So he talked to me about it. At that time, there was a course at BCIT. I went back and completed the course, and I started to fit hearing aids.
So in addition to selling eyeglasses?
Absolutely.
So you had a kind of a dual thing going on.
I did. And you know what? I enjoyed the fitting of hearing aids so much more than fitting glasses, and primarily because of the relationships that you have with people. You know, with eyeglasses, you might see them for half an hour, maybe 10 or 15 minutes to choose a frame, and they'd come back and you'd fit the pair of glasses after you'd ground the prescription and put the lenses in.
Sure.
With hearing aids, it takes about 5 hours by the time you complete the initial workup and case history to the hearing test, and then you take the impressions of the ears, and then you fit the hearing aid, and then the enormous amount of counseling that's required after that. You build strong relationships with people, and I enjoyed it immensely. I mean, and I loved working with seniors. Senior citizens, one thing I like about them, they have absolutely no pretenses, you know.
Right.
They're one of the most honest group of people that I've ever met in my life, and I switched. I made the professional change. And you never regretted it.
And from that practice, that single office practice up there in Kitimat and in that area, you ended up founding a company that was national, right across Canada.
That's great. That's correct. I ended up moving down to Victoria, took my family, moved down there, worked for another professional at the time, and then had my chance. I ended up buying an existing practice and started it up there, and in 1978, I founded a company called Island Hearing Services and grew it from a little company, a single company in Victoria, to 125 branches across Canada, all the way out to PEI in Nova Scotia.
Fantastic.
Yes, it took a lot of great people to do it, and we had a lot of fun doing it as well.
Now, did that expansion occur at about the same amount of time as baby boomers and their parents were beginning to discover how important hearing and the maintenance of hearing is to their condition? Because there's an awareness level that's really come about in the last 20 years.
It is. There has been. And, you know, we go back to when I first started, and there was very few people that would wear hearing aids because the technology was very basic in those days. And it's amazing, the development, the sophistication in the technology today. And back when I started, we would call this hearing loss the invisible handicap, because you know, you could see somebody who was blind or was in a wheelchair. You could see that they had a handicap, whereas someone that had hearing loss, you never knew until you started to talk to them.
Right.
And that's why it's called the invisible handicap.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Now, our other guest in studio is Dr. Ted Venema, who's with the Next Gen Hearing Center in Victoria.
That's
Ted,
right.
Nice to see you. Now, you have known Mark for quite a number of years and only have become associated with him recently. But you're an academic by training. You've worked all over Canada and the United States as a teacher. What got you into the whole hearing end of the game, so to speak, and how did you and Mark intersect along the way?
Well, I had no past in hearing loss or no real big interest in the ear until I was walking with a friend of mine up Hastings in Vancouver, and I was working at group homes in Coquitlam, and I said, I've got to do something with my life. And she said, why don't you become a speech therapist? You like to yak a lot. So I went to Western Washington in Bellingham and got a master's degree in audiology because I didn't like doing the speech part.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
So what's the difference between being a speech therapist and being an audiologist?
The speech deals with speech disorders and language disorders, people who've had strokes and kids who are having difficulty articulating speech.
Right.
The audiologist tests hearing and prescribes hearing aids.
So that end of the discipline became more interesting to you than the therapeutic stuff.
That's right. I flipped over.
Okay.
I went to the dark side.
Okay, and then you pursued some studies and really enhanced your qualifications.
Yeah, I worked for 3 years at the Canadian Hearing Society in Toronto, and then realized later on, that I wanted to go and teach. So I wanted to become a prof. So I went down south in the U.S. and studied at University of Oklahoma for a PhD there.
Okay, and
so then I ended up teaching at Auburn in Alabama.
Uh-huh.
Ever since we moved up here, we done lost our accents.
Well, good.
But and then found work at Unitron Hearing Aids in Canada, Kitchener, Ontario.
Okay.
Which is really a lot of hearing aid companies are based in Kitchener and that Cambridge area. Same with a bit in Toronto. And I worked at Unitron Hearing Aids, which is a Canadian homegrown hearing aid company.
Oh, and Mark was one of your customers.
And he was one of our biggest Canadian
customers. As you
customers.
were growing your business, Ted's company was one of your major suppliers.
Absolutely.
That's right.
We grew our business together.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So how did you manage to persuade him to come out from Blackberry country there in St. Catharines to run one of your operations on Vancouver Island?
You mean to get him out of Ontario?
Yes,
Ted would say.
that's right. That can be a challenge.
Well, I want you to know it was a bit of a challenge. It took about 20 years before I actually got convinced Ted to come out, and he actually called me. I would bring Ted out when he worked for Unitron to. Ted's a very articulate and is a highly sought after speaker on this whole subject of hearing and hearing loss. And he's spoken in Russia and in Australia, in many parts of the world. And I brought him out to speak to a number of ear, nose, throat surgeons and general practitioners here in Vancouver.
Okay.
And Ted did an unbelievable job. And I mentioned to him that time, you should consider moving out to BC. And finally, 20 years later, he phoned me. He's a bit of a slow learner, but he phoned me. Sunk in, and he called, and Ted joined me back in May, and he started up the Gordon Head office in Victoria and doing very well.
All right, now tell us, before we get into some of the nuances of hearing, and this is a fascinating subject, but talk to me a little bit about the stores, because we actually have two companies that we're talking about. We're talking about Next Gen, and we're talking about Mainland.
That's correct.
Now, between the two, you cover an awful lot of British Columbia, don't you?
We do. We cover the whole Vancouver Lower Mainland, the interior, including Kelowna and Vernon and Armstrong, soon Penticton.
Okay.
Vancouver Island, we cover all of Victoria. We have 5 locations in Victoria, and one in Nanaimo, one in Parksville, one in Port Alberni, and soon to open in Courtenay.
So this is, again, you're back at it again, aren't you, Mark?
Absolutely.
You're growing another company.
Well, I loved what I did. I mean, I retired for a couple of years once I sold my former company. Got bored. You can only do so much golf and travel so much, and I just loved what I do. I love making a difference in people's lives through better hearing. And it's a very challenging profession because you have to work with people. You really have to counsel them.
Right.
There's a real skill to be able to identify, the type of product and hearing aid that's going to help someone based upon their lifestyle, their budget, and their hearing needs, and then work with them, as they adapt to hearing again, to be able to introduce them back into their lifestyle and get them back active again, starting to enjoy those things that they've given up because of their hearing loss.
Ted, you talked about hearing as the invisible handicap. Are we a little slow off the mark in some cases in acknowledging a hearing loss or deterioration in hearing ability because it's kind of an ego thing? Because, if you're seen to be losing your hearing, how far can losing your marbles be behind that? And there's, especially I'm thinking in guys, a little, I'm fine. I'm fine. I hear just fine.
That's right.
And of course they don't. But do you get a fair bit of that?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Takes first of all, it's well known it takes between 5 to 7 years for someone to actually acknowledge that he or she has hearing loss and to do something about it.
All right.
But you're right. There's a stigma about hearing loss. I mean, vision loss occurs when you're about 40. Your arms aren't long enough to see the page. So you go to the dollar store and you'll pick up glasses or you'll get a prescription. But the hearing, has a real stigma with age, and people don't want to admit that. That's for sure.
Well, let's burst a couple of myth bubbles here while we're at it, Mark, because every human being, regardless of how trim and fit he or she may be, is going to experience hearing loss. It's part of the human condition, isn't it?
It is. It is. If you live long enough, you're going to acquire hearing loss. But there's a lot of factors that contribute to early onset of hearing loss as well.
Okay.
One of them is noise-induced hearing loss. If you're around a lot of noise, if you work in industry, or if you listen to these loud rock musics over a pair of headphones or earbuds, or go to rock concerts, you will acquire hearing loss much earlier than if you were sitting in Africa on the Serengeti Plains and not listening to anything except the crackling of a good fire around a weenie roast.
Right, exactly. Well, the program, gentlemen, is called Boomer Life, and we do that for a reason. And a lot of people who are listening right now, because Mark was looking at me kind of pointedly, Ted, like maybe I've been to a concert or two in my lifetime and listened to some music at ridiculous volumes.
But you've never done that.
Of course we all have. Boomers, we're a different cut of cloth. We've done as a generation.
Yes.
We've done stuff our way since the 1950s, and it's not likely any of us are going to change much as the road goes forward. It's just our generation, the largest single population group of the 20th century, has always been kind of inclined to take our own route. So let's go back to those glorious rock concert days for a minute. Okay, so I get great seats. And I'm sitting in front of the speakers. And I come out of the thing, and all my friends are talking about what a great show it is, and I can see their arms moving and their lips moving, but all I can hear is, I have this ringing sound in my ears, and it doesn't go away by the time I get home from the show. In fact, my ears ring for a couple of days. Guys, what's happened to my ears?
Well, you've had permanent hearing loss. I'll let Ted tell you more about that because he's got his PhD in that area. But please, Ted.
Yeah, you're very gracious, Mark.
You're very welcome.
When you've got these little tiny hair cells in your inner ear, they're like tiny little filaments, and a lot of loud sound crashes those and knocks them over like blades of grass. Now, you can walk over the lawn a few times, and the blades of grass will stand up, but you keep on doing that, and you'll wear a path. Now you've got you've worn the grass away. And you've got an uneven message coming from the brain to the ear and the ear to the brain. That's called tinnitus, ringing in the ear.
Oh, okay.
And that's a symptom of having listened to a lot of loud noise.
Okay.
It's not the only thing that causes tinnitus, but noise is a big cause of it. So when you've got that ringing in your ears, that's nature's warning to you. You've got some hair cell damage occurring. Better stop doing that.
Now, people have these experiences with tinnitus. It can happen just sort of out of nowhere. You can be driving along, and all of a sudden you hear this sort of high-pitched noise, and it stays in your ear for about 60 to 90 seconds, and you're going, Where did that come from?
You know what?
How do I get rid of that? And then all of a sudden it stops.
Yep. You know what?
Is that tinnitus?
Yes. Yeah, but that's not the regular kind of tinnitus. I've read research that says that's actually the sign of one hair cell signing off for good.
Uh-oh.
Now, don't worry. You got 15,000 in each ear, so
Okay.
hopefully it doesn't happen to you 15,000 times. But
So as we age, though, what breaks down? If there is a deterioration in our ability to hear properly,
Okay.
what's going south on us?
Remember what we were saying earlier, when you hit around age 40, your arms aren't long enough to see the page, and you get glasses. At around 65 years of age, you start to lose treble hearing, high-pitch hearing. And that's called presbycusis. And you might have heard the word Presbyterian. That means
more than a few times.
I'm a preacher's kid too. Presbyterian means church of the elders. Presbycusis means hearing in the elders. And presby is a Greek word for elder.
Okay.
And presbycusis is marked by treble hearing loss. And when you can't hear treble, you can't hear the consonants of speech.
Okay.
See, vowels are cheap. You've only got 5 vowels, and every word has a vowel.
Yes.
So you got 3,000 words, and they're sharing 5 vowels. But if you can't hear the consonants, then you can't tell whether the person said cat, hat, fat, bat, at. They all have but it's the missing high-pitched treble sounds of speech. And then that person is going to say, hey, I can hear, I just don't hear what they said.
So now we're not altogether stupid when we start to recognize this deterioration, this loss of ability to hear the important little sounds that conclude and begin words.
Yes.
We compensate. We're smart people. Our brains are highly evolved.
Yes.
Our brains they'll fill in some of those
Yep.
noises.
Yes.
But it may
to
not
a
be the
point.
right consonant.
To a point.
Right.
I mean, we're blessed with remarkably redundant nervous systems, and we can cover a lot of stuff that missing gaps, we can kind of cover it. But there comes a time when now you're stumbling quite a bit, and you're using your eyes to speech lip read quite a bit, and then you're answering the wrong punchline to a joke, and then you kind of are thinking, you know what? I think you guys ought to go out and have a good time. I'm going to stay home and read a book. And now you've got the pain of isolation that's occurring with the hearing loss as well.
And this, I can see how this would occur, Mark, because if you're a little reluctant to acknowledge hearing issues in the first place,
Yes.
then, or maybe just too proud, whatever,
Yes.
then you are essentially cutting yourself out of a lot of activities because, we don't realize how much we rely on our hearing until we don't hear quite so
That's
well
right.
anymore.
Yes, exactly.
And then we start, as Ted was saying, we start to voluntarily remove ourselves from social situations that could be a little embarrassing if we answer the wrong thing to the wrong question.
Yeah,
If we thought we heard you say this, and oh, is that what you said? Oh, gosh. And everybody's laughing. And, that's awkward and uncomfortable.
And
so why put yourself out into that position? You just don't bother mixing it up anymore.
And that's the stigma of hearing loss with age.
Yeah.
The person's he's losing his marbles because he's just not answering the right, he's not with it anymore.
Right.
And that's where the confusion lies with hearing loss and senility and the person just losing his or her marbles.
Right, exactly.
And it's not really, you can do something about it. You really can. It's not rocket science, but you really can amplify the correct pitches, which is exactly what a hearing aid does. It's not just making everything louder.
Right. Okay.
Well, too, I want to just introduce something here, too, that I think is equally as important, and that is the family. The family who starts to see their loved one, their mother or their father, start to begin to limit their activities, withdraw. Stop coming to family gatherings. They're not coming to the Christmas dinners or the Thanksgiving dinners anymore.
Right.
And they start to see them start to dwindle, in front of their very eyes. And, it's very upsetting for families to see the people they love begin to withdraw from life.
Yeah.
It's a whole quality of life issue.
It is.
And, it's very simple to correct. With a simple hearing test, you can identify whether that person has a hearing loss, and you can get them treatment, and you can get them back into their social activities again simply by introducing them to amplification, working with them it takes a little time, but working with them to reintroduce themselves back to the joy of some of the friends and family gatherings that they've missed out or withdrawn from.
It's a quality of life issue.
Absolutely, it is. We need to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll talk about the process of the hearing test and what's involved and what remedies can be brought to bear on people who are beginning to experience hearing deficiencies in one category or another.
Cool.
Finally, on Boomer Life, a conversation about hearing. It is so nice to have Mark Hamley and Dr. Ted Venema from Next Gen and Mainland Hearing Groups in studio on Boomer Life. Lots more still ahead. Stay with us.
Canada's only weekly radio show dedicated to the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on AM 650.